The Zathkar fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 300 warships, each one the size of a city, hung in the darkness near Jupiter. Their hulls gleamed with strange metals that human eyes had never seen before. Inside the command ship, Commander Vexnar looked at the blue planet in the distance with cold satisfaction. Earth, the third planet from a yellow star, home to a species that called themselves humans. Vexnar had studied their files during the journey. They were young. So very young. They had only left their planet 200 years ago. They had built small colonies on Mars and a few moons. Nothing impressive. Nothing dangerous. The commander had done this thousands of times before. 47 star systems now belonged to the Zathkar sovereignty. Thousands of species had surrendered to his empire. Most gave up the moment they saw his fleet. The smart ones knew they could not win. The foolish ones fought for a few days before accepting defeat. Either way, they all became part of the sovereignty in the end. Humans would be no different. Vexnar pressed a button on his command chair. His message broadcast across all radio frequencies, all communication channels, everything the humans used to talk to each other. His words reached Earth in 43 minutes, traveling at the speed of light. People of Earth, his voice was calm and confident. I am Commander Vexnar of the Zathkar sovereignty. Your solar system now falls under our protection. You have 72 hours to accept our terms. You will give us 40% of all your resources. You will destroy all your weapons. You will accept sovereignty rule. If you refuse, we will take what we want by force. You cannot win. Choose wisely. On Earth, people watched the alien message in shock and fear. The streets went quiet. Parents held their children. World leaders rushed to emergency meetings. The United Earth government formed only 50 years ago to unite all nations gathered in Geneva. President Sarah Chen stood at the head of the table. Around her sat representatives from every nation on Earth. Military generals, scientists, diplomats. They all looked worried. The room buzzed with nervous whispers. How many ships do we have? President Chen asked Admiral James Morrison. The admiral looked tired. 50 combat vessels. All of them together would fit inside one of their ships. We also have defense platforms around Earth and Mars, but... He stopped. Everyone knew what he meant. But it would not be enough. Can we negotiate? Asked the Chinese delegate. I tried, said the Secretary of State. They refused. They said negotiation is for equals. They see us as primitives. The room fell silent. Fear hung in the air like a heavy blanket. Then Admiral Morrison spoke again. His voice was quiet but steady. Madam President, there is one option, but it requires your authorization. The highest level. President Chen looked at him carefully. You mean the Doomsday Protocol? The Admiral nodded. Yes, ma'am. Whispers filled the room again. Most people at the table did not know what the Doomsday Protocol was. Only a few had the security clearance. Only a few knew the truth about what humanity had been building for the past 150 years. Explain it to everyone, President Chen said. They need to know what we're dealing with. Admiral Morrison stood. He pulled up a holographic display. Star maps appeared, showing the solar system, but there were things on the map that surprised many people. Thousands of small dots scattered throughout space. After World War III, the Admiral began, humanity nearly destroyed itself. Nuclear weapons almost ended our species. We learned a terrible lesson that day. We learned that the best way to prevent war is to make war so costly that nobody dares to start it. He touched the display. The dots lit up. When we went to space, we did not just explore. We weaponized everything. Every asteroid. Every moon. Every planet. The Doomsday Protocol is not just a plan. It is a network of weapons so powerful that activating it would destroy any fleet that dares to attack us. The room stared at the display in shock. Can it work against them? Someone asked. Admiral Morrison nodded slowly. Yes, but the cost will be high. Very high. President Chen closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about every person on Earth. 7 billion lives depending on her decision. She thought about giving up their freedom to alien masters. She thought about her grandchildren growing up as slaves. She opened her eyes. Send the Zathkar a message. What should it say? Asked the Secretary of State. President Chen's voice was cold and clear. Tell them we reject their terms. Tell them to leave our solar system immediately. The room erupted in shocked voices. But Madam President, someone started. She raised her hand. Silence fell. And add this. Leave now or perish. The message was sent. It traveled through space at light speed. 43 minutes later, it reached the Zathkar fleet. Commander Vexnar read it. Then he read it again. Then he started laughing. His officers joined him. The bridge of his command ship filled with mocking laughter. Leave or perish. Vexnar wiped tears from his eyes. These primitives threaten us. They have 50 ships. We have 300. They barely left their planet. We rule 47 star systems. His second-in-command smiled. Should we teach them a lesson, Commander? Vexnar nodded. His face turned serious. Yes, send 20 ships to Earth, destroy their orbital platforms, burn their military bases, show them what happens when they refuse the sovereignty, but do not kill too many. We need workers after all. 20 Zathkar warships broke away from the main fleet. They accelerated toward Earth, their engines bright against the darkness of space. On Earth, Admiral Morrison watched them come. He turned to President Chen. Activate the Doomsday Protocol, she said quietly. The Admiral saluted. Yes, Madam President, he entered his codes. Deep in bunkers around the world, ancient systems came to life. Systems that had waited silently for 150 years. Systems that humanity hoped they would never need to use. The countdown began. Humanity had given the Zathkar a warning. Commander Vexnar had laughed at it. He would soon learn why that was a mistake. He would soon learn that humans did not make empty threats. He would soon learn that a species that nearly destroyed itself knows exactly how to destroy others. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The 20 Zathkar warships moved through space like hunters stalking prey. Commander Vexnar watched their progress from his command ship near Jupiter. His tactical display showed them crossing the orbit of Mars. Soon they would reach Earth. Soon the humans would understand their place in the galaxy. Commander, his sensor officer called out. The human defense fleet is moving, Vexnar smiled. Finally, some resistance. Show me. The display changed. 50 human ships, tiny compared to his vessels, moved away from Earth. They accelerated toward Mars. For a moment, Vexnar thought they were coming to fight. Then they kept going, past Mars, away from the battle zone. They are retreating, his second-in-command said with disgust. Cowards. Vexnar leaned back in his chair. As I expected. Send a message to the strike force. Tell them to accelerate. The humans have no courage for this fight. But on Earth, in a deep underground bunker, Admiral Morrison watched the same tactical display with different eyes. He saw the Zathkar ships moving exactly where he wanted them. He saw his own fleet pulling back to safety. Everything was going according to plan. Admiral, a young officer said nervously, they are calling us cowards on all channels. Morrison did not look away from his screen. Let them talk. Words do not win battles. President Chen stood beside him, watching the enemy ships draw closer. How long until they enter the zone? 12 minutes, Madam President, she nodded. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands gripped the rail in front of her. Tell me about the protocol. Tell me everything. Admiral Morrison pulled up classified files on a secondary screen, files that were marked with the highest security levels, files that showed the true nature of humanity's preparations for this day. After World War III, he began, we had a choice. We could give up weapons and hope for peace, or we could make ourselves so dangerous that no one would dare attack us. The Council chose the second path. Images appeared on the screen, space stations that looked like research facilities, asteroids that seemed to be mining operations, moon bases that appeared to be scientific outposts. But when Morrison touched each one, their true nature revealed itself. Every research station is also a weapons platform, he explained. Every mining operation contains military-grade explosives. Every scientific base has defense systems. We spent 150 years building this. We spent trillions of dollars. We did it in secret, hiding our weapons as peaceful projects. President Chen studied the display. What kind of weapons? Everything we could imagine, Morrison said. Kinetic weapons that fire tungsten rods at nearly light speed. Antimatter mines hidden in asteroid fields. Quantum entanglement bombs that can appear anywhere in the solar system. And the Sol cage. The Sol cage, President Chen repeated. I have heard whispers about it. But no one would tell me what it is. Morrison hesitated. Then he showed her. The screen displayed a network of satellites around the sun. Thousands of them. We built a cage around our star. These satellites can focus and direct solar energy. They can turn the sun itself into a weapon, a beam of concentrated starfire that can cut through any ship, any fleet, any army. The president stared at the image. Her voice was barely a whisper. That is unbelievable. That is survival, Morrison replied. The Doomsday Protocol is not just one weapon. It is a complete defensive system, layer upon layer of traps, each one designed to destroy an invading force. The Zathkar think they are attacking a primitive species. They are wrong. 5 minutes, someone called out. The Zathkar strike force crossed into the inner solar system. Their sensors showed nothing unusual. Empty space, a few satellites, some orbital stations. Nothing dangerous. They accelerated faster, eager to reach Earth and complete their mission. In the lead ship, Captain Zektor smiled. This would be easy. The humans had abandoned their defenses. They had run away. His crew would destroy the orbital platforms, bomb a few cities, and return to Commander Vexnar as heroes. Captain, his sensor officer said, I am detecting some unusual energy readings. Zektor waved his hand dismissively. Probably their primitive power systems. Ignore it, but the sensor officer looked worried. Sir, these readings do not match anything in our database. I have never seen... 2 minutes, Admiral Morrison said. The command center on Earth fell silent. Every person watched their screens. Every person knew what was about to happen. Some prayed. Some held hands with colleagues. Some simply waited. President Chen took a deep breath. Admiral, once we start this, can we stop it? No, Madam President. The protocol, once activated, runs to completion. We gave them a warning. They ignored it. Now they will face the consequences. 1 minute. The Zathkar ships reached Earth's moon. They passed the ancient lunar bases. They moved between satellites. They entered the exact position that human planners had calculated 100 years ago. 30 seconds. Captain Zektor leaned forward in his command chair. Prepare weapons. Target their orbital platforms first. Show these humans what real power looks like. Weapons ready, Captain. 10 seconds, Admiral Morrison said. His hand hovered over a red button. The button that would change everything. President Chen closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about every human who had died in Earth's wars. She thought about every lesson those deaths had taught. She thought about the promise humanity had made after World War III. Never again would they be victims. Never again would they be helpless. She opened her eyes and nodded. Do it, Admiral Morrison pressed the button. For 1 second, nothing happened. The Zathkar ships continued forward. Captain Zektor opened his mouth to give the order to fire. Then space itself seemed to tear apart. Quantum phase mines, invisible until the moment of detonation, exploded throughout the formation. They did not explode like normal weapons. They did not create fire or shrapnel. Instead, they erased reality itself. 5 Zathkar ships simply ceased to exist. 1 moment they were there. The next moment, nothing remained. Not debris, not atoms, nothing. Captain Zektor stared in horror.
What was that?
Before anyone could answer, the kinetic platforms activated. Hidden among Earth's satellites, they had waited silently for decades. Now they awoke. Tungsten rods, each one the size of a telephone pole, accelerated to 90% of light speed in less than a second. 4 more Zathkar ships died. The rods hit with the force of nuclear weapons. Shields meant to stop energy beams did nothing against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The ships tore apart like paper. Retreat, Captain Zektor screamed. All ships retreat now. But his remaining ships could not move. They tried to fire their engines. Nothing happened. Gravity well traps using exotic matter that bent space itself held them in place. The ships were frozen in an invisible prison. Zektor's sensor officer turned to him with terror in his eyes.
Captain, we cannot escape.
They planned this. They knew exactly where we would be. This is a trap. One by one, Earth's defensive network picked off the trapped ships. Laser platforms that had pretended to be communication satellites. Missile batteries hidden inside fake asteroids. Autonomous hunter drones that looked like space junk. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 11 minutes. Only 1 Zathkar ship survived, and only because Admiral Morrison ordered his weapons to stop firing. He wanted survivors. He wanted witnesses. Captain Zektor sat in his damaged command chair, surrounded by dead crew members, and stared at the communication screen. A human face appeared, An old man with gray hair and cold eyes. "I am Admiral James Morrison of the United Earth Defense Force," the human said. "Your ship is disabled. Your weapons are destroyed. You will surrender immediately or you will die." Zektor could barely speak. What are you?" Morrison's expression did not change. "We are humans. We nearly destroyed ourselves once. We learned from that mistake. We learned that survival requires strength. We learned that peace requires the willingness to wage war. Your commander thought we were primitive. He was wrong." Near Jupiter, Commander Vexnar watched his tactical display in disbelief. 20 ships gone in 11 minutes. He had received Captain Zektor's final transmission before the trap closed. He had heard the fear in his officer's voice. The command bridge was silent. Every officer stared at their screens, trying to understand what had happened. How could primitives destroy a Zathkar strike force so easily? Vexnar's second-in-command spoke quietly. "Commander, should we retreat?" Vexnar's face turned red with rage. "Retreat, retreat? We are the Zathkar sovereignty. We rule 47 star systems. We will not run from these animals." He stood up and pointed at Earth on the main display. "Send every ship, the entire fleet. I will crush these humans myself. I will turn their planet into ash. They will regret their defiance." 280 warships began to move. The full might of the Zathkar sovereignty, gathered together, accelerated toward Earth. It was the largest military formation they had ever deployed. On Earth, Admiral Morrison received the report. He looked at President Chen. "They are coming with everything," he said. She nodded slowly. "Then we show them everything." The 72-hour deadline had expired. The Zathkar had made their choice. Now they would learn the truth about humanity. Now they would understand why Earth's final warning had not been a bluff. The real battle was about to begin. The Zathkar armada moved through space like a storm of metal and fire, 280 warships in perfect formation. Their shields glowed with energy, their weapons charged and ready. Commander Vexnar stood on his bridge, watching Earth grow larger on the main display. "This time," he said to his officers, "we will not underestimate them. We will hit them with everything at once, no mercy. No survivors." His fleet crossed Saturn's orbit. Space looked empty and peaceful. The rings of Saturn glittered in the distant sunlight. Nothing seemed dangerous. Then the rings exploded. What the Zathkar thought were ice fragments were actually antimatter mines. Humanity had placed them there 50 years ago, disguised as natural debris. Hundreds of them detonated at once. The explosions were not like normal bombs. When matter and antimatter meet, they annihilate each other completely, turning mass directly into pure energy. 70. Zathkar ships vanished in the first wave of explosions. The shockwave hit the remaining vessels, throwing them out of formation. Alarms screamed on every bridge. Shields flickered and failed. Crews scrambled to respond. Vexnar grabbed his command chair as his ship rocked from the blast. Evasive maneuvers. Scatter the fleet. But scattering was exactly what Admiral Morrison wanted. On Earth, Morrison watched the battle unfold on multiple screens. Each screen showed a different view of the solar system. Each screen showed a different layer of Earth's defenses activating. "Phase 2, he said calmly. The scattered Zathkar ships tried to regroup. They accelerated past Saturn, determined to continue toward Earth despite their losses. They thought the worst was behind them. They were wrong. In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, humanity had been working for decades. They had hollowed out the largest asteroids. Inside each one, they installed massive fusion engines and weapon systems. The asteroids looked natural from the outside, but inside they were weapons of incredible power. Now on Morrison's command, those asteroids came to life. Their engines fired. They accelerated out of the belt, moving faster than anything so large should be able to move. They were kamikaze weapons designed for one purpose: to ram enemy ships. One Zathnar captain saw an asteroid coming toward his ship. "It is just a rock," he told his crew. "Our shields will deflect it." The asteroid hit the ship at thousands of kilometers per hour. The shields did nothing. The ship split in half. The asteroid continued through, already turning toward its next target. 50 more Zathkar ships fell to the asteroid assault. The weapons were crude but effective. Even alien technology could not stop millions of tons of rock moving at high speed. Vexinar's tactical officer reported the losses. "Commander, we have lost 120 ships, more than 40% of our fleet. Vexnar's face had gone pale. He had never seen losses like this. In all his conquests, he had never lost more than 10 ships in a single battle. But he could not show weakness now. His crew was watching. "We continue," he said. "Return fire. Destroy everything. These humans want war. We will show them war." The remaining Zathkar ships opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space. Missiles launched by the thousands. They targeted everything they could see. Satellites, space stations, orbital platforms, but their weapons hit nothing. The energy beams disappeared into empty space. The missiles exploded harmlessly. Earth's defensive grid used distributed shields, not the single-point shields the Zathkar relied on. Power came from millions of solar collectors spread across the inner solar system. Destroying one collector did nothing. The system simply rerouted power through the others. One Zathkar weapons officer stared at his screen in confusion. "Commander, our weapons are having no effect. They're shields. They are everywhere and nowhere at the same time." "Impossible," Vexnar growled. "Nothing can withstand our firepower." But as his fleet drew closer to Earth, they found out what else humanity had prepared. The Earth Defense Fleet emerged from the outer solar system. 50 ships, the same ones that had retreated earlier, but they were not running now. And they were not alone. Hidden bases on moons and planets opened their hangar doors. Hundreds of smaller craft joined the main fleet. Fighters, bombers, drones. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Defiance. Around him, his officers prepared for battle. This was what they had trained for. This was what humanity had built toward for 150 years. "All ships," Morrison said into the fleet communication channel. "You know what to do. Show them what humans are capable of." "For Earth," thousands of voices answered. "For Earth!" The human fleet attacked. Their weapons were not what the Zathkar expected. Humanity had spent decades developing technology specifically designed to fight enemies with superior numbers and firepower. Singularity cannons fired. These weapons created tiny black holes that lasted only microseconds, but in those microseconds they could tear through any armor, any shield. The black holes appeared inside Zathkar ships, destroying them from within. Virus warheads detonated near enemy vessels. Instead of explosions, they released digital attacks. The Zathkar relied heavily on artificial intelligence to run their ships. The human viruses infected those systems, turning ship against ship, weapon against weapon. Reality-phasing torpedoes passed through shields as if they were not there. The torpedoes existed in a different phase of reality until the moment of impact. By the time the Zathkar sensors detected them, it was too late. The battle raged across the inner solar system. Ship to ship, weapon to weapon. The Zathkar fought bravely. Their warriors were experienced. Their ships were powerful, but they were fighting on humanity's ground, against humanity's weapons in a system that humans had turned into a fortress. Earth's fleet lost 30 ships. Each loss hurt. Each death was a tragedy. But the Zathkar losses were far worse. Another 80 ships destroyed. The once mighty armada was now reduced to 110 vessels. On the Zathkar command ship, Vexnar finally understood. His second-in-command spoke the words he did not want to hear. "Commander, we must retreat. We cannot win this battle." Vexnar looked at his tactical display. More than half his fleet was gone. The survivors were damaged and scattered. The humans showed no signs of running out of weapons or will to fight. For the first time in his long military career, Commander Vexnar gave an order he never thought he would give. "All ships, retreat. Leave this system immediately." The Zathkar ships turned and ran. They accelerated away from Earth, desperate to escape. Some did not make it. Human fighters pursued them, cutting down the slowest vessels. But Admiral Morrison was not finished. President Chen had authorized him to use humanity's most powerful weapon. The weapon they hoped never to use. The weapon that proved beyond any doubt that humans were not to be trifled with. "Activate the Sol cage," Morrison ordered. Around the sun, thousands of satellites had waited for this moment. They were solar sail networks designed to collect and focus stellar energy. Now they moved into position. They aligned with mathematical precision. They created a lens of unimaginable power. The sun's light began to concentrate, billions of watts of energy, focused into a single beam. The beam was not fire. It was not plasma. It was pure stellar radiation, channeled and directed by human technology. The beam fired. It crossed the solar system in minutes. It hit the fleeing Zathkar fleet like the wrath of an angry god. Ships did not explode. They simply ceased to exist, vaporized instantly by temperatures that matched the surface of the sun itself. The beam cut through the fleet in a single sweep. 85 more ships gone in seconds. Only 25 vessels survived, including Vexnar's command ship. They were the ones farthest from the beam's path. They were the lucky ones. On his bridge, surrounded by sparking consoles and dead crew members, Vexnar stared at the empty space where his fleet had been. His voice was barely a whisper. What have we done? A communication channel opened. Admiral Morrison's face appeared on the screen. Commander Vexnar, the human said. His voice was tired but firm. You came to our home. You threatened our people. You ignored our warning. This is the result. Vexnar could not speak. Morrison continued. We are going to let you go. You and your surviving ships. Do you know why? Vexnar shook his head slowly. Because we want you to carry a message, Morrison said. Tell your empire what happened here. Tell them about the weapons we used. Tell them about the fleet you lost. Tell every species in the galaxy that Earth is not weak. We do not conquer. We do not invade. But if you attack us, we will destroy you completely. Morrison leaned closer to the camera. You were given one final warning. Leave now or perish. You chose to ignore it. Consider this mercy, now go, and never return. The communication ended. The 25 surviving Zathkar ships fled. They activated their faster-than-light drives and disappeared into the darkness of space. On Earth, in the command center, silence fell. The battle was over. Humanity had won, but the victory felt heavy. Thousands of aliens had died. 30 human ships had been destroyed with all their crews. President Chen put her hand on Admiral Morrison's shoulder. You did what you had to do, Morrison nodded. But his eyes were sad. I know, but I hope we never have to do it again. Outside the command center, people on Earth celebrated. They had survived. They had defended their home. They had proven that humanity could not be conquered. But in the quiet moments, many wondered what would happen next. Word would spread across the galaxy. Other species would hear about Earth 6 months passed since the battle. 6 months since the Zathkar fleet had been destroyed. 6 months since humanity proved it was not prey. Commander Vexnar stood before the High Council of the Zathkar sovereignty. Once he had been a proud military leader, conqueror of 47 star systems. Now he wore no uniform. His rank had been stripped away. He was just another citizen, brought to account for his failure. The council chamber was massive and dark. 7 figures sat on elevated thrones, their faces hidden in shadow. They had ruled the sovereignty for 300 years. They had overseen countless conquests. Never before had they experienced such a defeat. Tell us again, the first counselor said. Tell us how you lost 275 warships to a species that barely left their planet. Vexnar had told this story many times. To military investigators, to intelligence analysts, to shocked politicians. But the truth never changed. The humans were not what we expected, he said quietly. Our intelligence files said they were explorers, scientists peaceful, but those files were wrong. The second counselor leaned forward. Explain. They nearly destroyed themselves in wars centuries ago, Vexnar continued. Nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons. They almost went extinct. Most species that survive such a period become pacifists. They swear off violence. The humans did the opposite. He activated a holographic display. Images appeared showing Earth's solar system. But this was not a normal star system. Red dots covered everything. Thousands of them. Every red dot is a weapon, Vexnar explained. Antimatter mines. Kinetic platforms. Hidden bases. They spent 150 years turning their entire solar system into a fortress. They disguised military installations as research stations. They hid weapons in asteroids. They even found a way to weaponize their sun. The third counselor spoke. This is impossible. Our sensors would have detected such preparations. That is what I thought, Vexnar said bitterly. But they are masters of deception. Every weapon looked like something peaceful. Every trap was invisible until it was too late. They did not just defeat us. They annihilated us. The council chamber fell silent. The counselors looked at each other. Finally, the first counselor spoke again. What is your assessment? Could we defeat them if we sent a larger fleet? Vexnar shook his head. No, we only saw a fraction of their capabilities. They have weapons we do not understand, technology we cannot counter, and most importantly, they have something we have never encountered before. What is that? The fourth counselor asked. Desperation, Vexnar said. They fight like a species that has nothing to lose. They fight like every battle might be their last. They are not warriors seeking glory. They are survivors willing to do anything to protect their home. The words hung in the air. The Zathkar sovereignty had always fought for conquest, for resources, for glory. They had never fought for pure survival. They did not understand that kind of desperation. The fifth counselor made a decision. Earth and its colonies are now forbidden territory. Any ship that enters their solar system does so at their own risk. We will not waste more resources on these humans. But the news of the battle spread far beyond Zathkar space. Across the galaxy, different species reacted in different ways. The Krill Empire, known for their military might, studied the battle recordings. Their generals watched in fascination as human weapons destroyed Zathkar ships. They saw the Soul Cage fire. They saw an entire fleet vanish. These humans, one Krill general said, they understand war in a way few species do. They are dangerous, his commander nodded. Dangerous to their enemies. We should avoid becoming their enemies. Plans for potential expansion toward Earth's region of space were quietly cancelled. The Hive Collective, a species that operated through shared consciousness, analyzed every detail of the battle. They were fascinated by human strategy. Most species fought in predictable ways. The humans did not. They used traps. They used deception. They turned their home system into a killing field. These humans are not like other species, the collective's military mind decided. They think like predators, but they act like prey defending their nest. This makes them unpredictable. Unpredictable species are best left alone. But not all species saw humans as enemies to avoid. The Galactic Council was a loose organization of peaceful species. They had no military power. They survived by diplomacy and mutual cooperation. For years, they had been victims of aggressive empires like the Zathkar sovereignty. Now they saw an opportunity. Ambassador Zelitha of the Council approached Earth 7 months after the battle. Her ship, unarmed and transmitting peaceful intentions on all frequencies, entered the solar system slowly and carefully. She received an immediate response from Earth Defense Command. Unknown vessel, this is Earth Defense. State your purpose, Zelitha spoke calmly. I am Ambassador Zelitha of the Galactic Council. I come in peace to speak with your leaders. I carry an invitation. After careful security checks, she was allowed to land on Earth. She was taken to Geneva, to the United Earth Government headquarters. President Sarah Chen met her in a private conference room. The ambassador was tall and elegant with silver skin and multiple eyes. She looked at President Chen with respect. Madam President, Zelitha began, I represent 23 peaceful species. For centuries, we have been victims of empires like the Zathkar. They take our resources. They threaten our people. We have no military power to stop them. President Chen listened carefully. And now? Now we have heard about Earth, Zelitha said. We heard about what you did to the Zathkar fleet. The galaxy is talking about nothing else. You proved that even the mightiest empire can be defeated. You proved that a single determined species can stand against aggression. She paused. We wish to invite Earth to join the Galactic Council, not as subjects, not as servants, but as equals, and if you are willing, as protectors. President Chen considered this carefully. You want us to defend you? We want an alliance, Zelitha clarified. We offer friendship, trade, knowledge sharing. In return, we hope that your reputation, your proven strength, will make aggressors think twice before attacking council members. You want us to be a deterrent, President Chen said. Yes. Your very existence makes the galaxy safer for peaceful species. That is worth something. President Chen called for a meeting of Earth's leadership. They debated for days. Some wanted to accept immediately. Others worried about being drawn into galactic conflicts. Some argued that Earth should remain isolated. Others believed humanity had a responsibility to help peaceful species. Finally, they reached a decision. President Chen met with Ambassador Zelitha again. We accept your invitation, but with conditions. Of course, Zelitha said. What are your terms? First, we maintain full sovereignty. Earth makes its own decisions. Second, we keep our defensive systems exactly as they are. We will not disarm. Third, we will help defend council members, but we will not start wars. We are protectors, not conquerors. Zalitha smiled. Those terms are more than acceptable. In fact, they are exactly what we hoped you would say. And so Earth joined the Galactic Council. But they also made one more announcement, broadcast to every inhabited system in the galaxy. It was simple and clear. Admiral Morrison himself delivered it. This is Admiral James Morrison of the United Earth Defense Force. I speak on behalf of all humanity. We have joined the Galactic Council. Earth and her colonies, as well as all Council member territories, are now under human protection. He paused, letting his words carry across the stars. We do not seek conflict. We do not desire conquest. But we will not allow aggression against innocent species. Any act of war against Council members will be considered an act of war against Earth. And you have seen what happens to those who make war on us. His face became hard as steel. This is not a threat. This is a promise. This is not a bluff. This is a guarantee. Leave us and our allies in peace, and we will leave you in peace. Attack us or them, and you will face the same fate as the Zathkar sovereignty. He leaned closer to the camera. We gave the Zathkar one final warning. They ignored it. They paid the price. We offer you the same warning now. Consider it carefully. Consider what you saw happen to 275 warships. Consider whether your ambitions are worth that cost. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, military leaders watched that message, some with anger, some with fear, some with respect. But all of them understood its meaning. Humanity had drawn a line. Anyone who crossed that line would face consequences beyond imagination. The galaxy had a new power. Not a conquering empire, not an aggressive military force, but something perhaps more dangerous, a species willing to do anything to protect what they considered theirs. Species that had learned the hardest lessons from their own history, a species that understood that the best way to prevent war was to make war unthinkable. The era of unchallenged aggression was over. The age of Earth had begun. 1 year after the battle, Earth looked different. The streets were still the same. The cities still buzzed with life. But something fundamental had changed. Humanity knew it was not alone anymore. Humanity knew it had enemies. And humanity knew it had the strength to survive. Admiral James Morrison stood at the window of his office looking up at the night sky. Somewhere out there, among those stars, were species that feared Earth. Species that respected Earth. Species that would never again underestimate humanity. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he said. President Sarah. Chen entered. She looked tired but satisfied. The past year had been difficult. Integrating with the Galactic Council, establishing trade agreements, building diplomatic relationships. But it was working. Earth was becoming a major galactic power. "Thought I might find you here," she said, joining him at the window. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked finally. "The battle. The deaths." Morrison considered the question carefully. "Every day," he admitted. "I think about every ship we destroyed, every life that ended because of our weapons. But then I think about what would have happened if we had surrendered. 7 billion humans enslaved. Our children growing up without freedom. Our world stripped of resources." He turned to face her. "We gave them a warning. A clear, honest warning. They chose to ignore it. The blood is on their hands, not ours." President Chen nodded. "The Galactic Council wants to hold a ceremony next month. They want to officially recognize Earth as a major power. They want to thank us for protecting smaller species from aggression." "Good," Morrison said. "We should accept. We need to show the galaxy that we are not monsters. We defend, we protect, but we do not attack without cause." Speaking of which, President Chen pulled out a datapad. Intelligence reports that the Krill Empire is planning aggressive expansion near Council space. Not toward us, but toward some of our allies. Morrison's expression hardened. "What do we know?" "Not much yet. They are being careful, testing boundaries, seeing if we will actually follow through on our promise to protect Council members." She looked at him seriously. "This could be our first real test since joining the Council. What the Zathkar tried to do to us, the Krill might try to do to our allies. Then we need to make our position clear again," Morrison said. "Not with weapons, not yet, but with words backed by the memory of what we did to the Zathkar fleet." President Chen agreed. Over the next week, Earth sent a diplomatic message to the Krill Empire. It was polite. It was professional. But it was also absolutely clear. Council territories were under human protection. Any aggression would be met with force. The Krill could choose peace or war. Earth hoped they would choose wisely. The Krill generals studied the message. They reviewed the battle recordings from the Zathkar defeat. They calculated their chances. After a month of deliberation, they chose peace. Their expansion plans were quietly canceled. Earth had won again without firing a single shot. The reputation alone was enough, but not everyone was happy with Earth's growing influence. In a dark corner of the galaxy, far from council space, a meeting took place. Representatives from 5 aggressive empires gathered. They were all species that had profited from conquest. They were all worried about Earth. "The humans are changing everything," one representative said. "Before them we could expand freely. Now every weak species hides behind Earth's protection. What do we do?" Another asked. "We all saw what happened to the Zathkar. Can we defeat the humans?" Silence fell. No one wanted to answer that question. Finally, an old military commander spoke. "We cannot defeat them in their home system. That is certain. Their defenses are too strong. But perhaps we do not need to. Perhaps we can simply avoid them. The galaxy is large. There are many systems far from Earth's reach." Another representative shook his head. "For how long?" "They are building alliances. They are spreading their influence. In 10 years, 20 years, they might protect half the galaxy. What then?" No one had an answer. The meeting ended with no decisions made. But the seed of fear had been planted. Fear of Earth, fear of humanity's weapons, fear of a species that had nearly destroyed itself, and learned to channel that destructive capability toward protecting others. Back on Earth, in the deep command center where the Doomsday Protocol controls were housed, technicians maintained the weapon systems. The antimatter mines were checked and recalibrated. The kinetic platforms ran diagnostic tests. The Sol Cage satellites maintained their positions around the sun. Everything was ready. Everything would always be ready. Admiral Morrison visited these facilities regularly. He wanted to remind himself of what humanity had built. He wanted to remember the responsibility that came with such power. On this particular visit, he stood before the main control panel. The same panel he had used to activate the protocol during the battle. His hand rested on the protective cover over the red button. A young officer approached him. "Sir, do you think we will ever have to use it again?" Morrison looked at her. She was barely 25 years old. She had been in training when the battle happened. She represented the new generation, the generation that would inherit this responsibility. "I hope not," he said honestly. "I hope that what we did to the Zathkar was enough. I hope every species in the galaxy understands the message. But hope is not a strategy. We must always be ready. We must always be vigilant." "Yes, sir," she said. "We will keep watch." Morrison smiled slightly. "Good. Because the moment we stop watching, the moment we become complacent, that is when someone will try to test us. And we cannot afford to fail. Too many depend on us now." He left the command center and returned to the surface. The sun was setting over Geneva. The city glowed in the golden light. People walked the streets, laughing and talking. Children played in parks. Couples held hands. Life continued, peaceful and normal. They did not know about the weapons hidden throughout the solar system. They did not understand the constant vigilance required to protect their peaceful lives. And that was okay. That was how it should be. The military existed so that civilians could live without fear. The Doomsday Protocol existed so that no one would dare threaten Earth again. Morrison pulled out his personal communication device. A message waited from Ambassador Zelitha. "Admiral, I wanted to thank you personally. Since Earth joined the Council, attacks on member species have dropped by 75%. Your reputation protects us more effectively than any fleet. You have given hope to species that had none. Thank you." Morrison felt a weight lift from his shoulders. This was why they had fought. This was why they maintained their weapons. Not for conquest, not for glory, but to protect the innocent, to give hope to the hopeless, to prove that aggression did not always win. He thought back to that day 1 year ago. The day he had pressed the red button. The day Earth had shown the galaxy what humanity was capable of. The day everything changed. Was it worth it? The death? The destruction? The moral weight of so much violence? He looked at the peaceful city before him. He thought about the council species that no longer lived in fear. He thought about the aggressive empires that now thought twice before attacking the weak. Yes, it was worth it. Humanity had learned the hardest lessons. They had nearly destroyed themselves in wars. They had felt the terror of facing extinction. They had crawled back from the edge of oblivion and swore, never again would they be helpless. Never again would they be victims. Never again would they allow aggression to go unchallenged. These were not just words. These were principles backed by the most powerful defensive network ever created. These were promises guaranteed by weapons that could destroy fleets, crack planets, and harness the power of the sun itself. The galaxy had learned to respect these promises. Commander Vexnar, stripped of rank and living in exile, had been right about one thing. Humans were not warriors seeking glory. They were survivors who had turned survival into an art form. They had weaponized their fear. They had channeled their trauma into strength. And now they stood as guardians, not just for Earth, not just for humanity, but for any species that chose peace over war, cooperation over conquest, hope over fear. The message Earth had broadcast 1 year ago still echoed through the galaxy. It was simple. It was clear. It was absolute. Earth and her allies were protected. Any act of aggression would be met with overwhelming force. This was not a threat. This was a promise. Leave them alone and they would leave you alone. Threaten them and face extinction. One final warning. The Zathkar had ignored it and paid the ultimate price. Now every species in the galaxy knew better. They had seen the recordings. They had heard the stories. They understood what humanity was capable of when pushed. Morrison looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, species were making decisions. Some chose peace because they feared Earth's weapons. Others chose peace because they respected Earth's principles. Either way, peace was spreading. That was enough. He turned away from the window and walked toward his home. His family waited for him. His wife, his children. They represented everything he fought to protect. Every weapon, every sacrifice, every difficult decision, all of it was for them, for their future, for a galaxy where they could live without fear.